Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Mindfulness and Meditation 101. Countless studies have proven the benefits of mindfulness and meditation. These practices can help lower stress, improve your sleep, manage feelings of anxiety and depression, and increase your overall health. Today, we're going to be talking about the basics of mindfulness and meditation, as well as provide some practical tips and tricks on the practice. I'm pleased to introduce today's speaker, Jovahna Pena, a clinician here at Jefferson Center with our wellness team. Before I hand over the mic to Jovahna, I have a few housekeeping items to cover about this presentation. First, I want to thank our webinar sponsor, the Rotary Club of Golden. Thank you for your commitment to mental health in the community. Next, this webinar will be available on demand after the live session, and we'll email that out to you along with additional resources and the slide deck. I would also encourage you to visit our website at jcmh.org, where you'll find out more information about how to get started if you're interested in talking with a therapist, as well as blog posts and information about upcoming webinars on other mental health topics. Please keep your microphones muted and turn off your video during the presentation. You'll also want to change your Zoom view to speaker mode for the best viewing experience. Next, we'd love to hear from you during today's presentation. If you have a question for our speaker, please feel free to send it through the chat at the bottom of your player. We'll be answering questions at the end of the session. If we don't get to your question during today's webinar, we'll be sure to follow up afterward. And last, we'd like to encourage you to follow us on our social networks and share the recording of this webinar and other information with Jefferson Center. So without further ado, Jovahna, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you so much. So let's go ahead and get started here on our presentation today. So here we go. We have some images that really are, they're associated with this topic of mindfulness and meditation. So it's hot. It's a hot topic. And there's some numbers there that point to about 30 million Americans have either tried it or they practice it regularly. In the last couple of years, it's been on the cover story of Time magazine and Scientific American. And there's also been 60-minute specials on it. So, public figures such as Oprah, we have NFL players, they are doing it, talking about it, influencing it a great deal. So it's becoming more widely spread in practice. I also want to mention it's being integrated into schools, prisons. There's a lot of prison programs where meditation teachers actually come in. And also mental health. So that's a big one here where it kind of applies to Jefferson Center and some of the services we do offer, which I'll talk about at the end. But that is a definite insertion there with the realm of mental health. So what is it? I'm gonna, go back here. Going to move this so I can see it fully. So mindfulness is a means of paying attention. Hold on one sec, I'm trying to get the screen moved so I can see this. There we go. Okay, so mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. So this is a pretty basic kind of definition from Jon Kabat-Zinn, who is the founder of mindfulness-based stress reduction, also known as MBSR, a person who did a lot of studies about the benefits of mindfulness. So we have those kind of key components there. Again, really present moment focus. There's an intentionality with that word, on purpose, and the concept of non-judgmental awareness. So kind of moving beyond kind of the dualistic, thinking system that's really in place of, right, wrong, good, bad. There's just this sense of kind of just being with what is. So we're going to talk a little bit more, kind of expand upon that, but there's a very basic definition for you. We have regular practice cultivates 3 core skills. So to kind of encapsulate and focus upon these skills that it emphasizes, the first one we have is concentration. So this is more or less the ability to focus and stabilize one's attention. Oftentimes it will be something like the breath. So that's a very common one, is focusing on tracking the breath. Another one might be bodily sensations. So kind of noticing, what's going on as you focus in internally, tracking internal sensations. Um, then we've got the second core skill of sensory clarity. So this is the ability to keep track of the components of sensory experience as they arise in various combinations, moment by moment. So kind of what I was just talking about with tracking sensation as one form. So really, again, that emphasis on moment to moment, noticing what's happening, tracking it through sensation. Equanimity, the ability to be with the experience with an attitude of gentle matter of factness. This kind of goes back into that sense of cultivating a non-judgmental sense of awareness. So again, being with whatever the experience is, even if it means that there might be pain associated, physical pain, chronic pain specifically, something like that. It's actually, the idea is to be with the experience. It seems counterintuitive, as if, you experience pain in some way. It's almost like an automatic reaction to not want to experience the pain, to actually rather go out of the experience, out of the pain. But this would actually emphasize going into the experience, feeling these sensations. And a lot of research is really being shown, especially in the realm of things like chronic pain, that this is the way into managing chronic pain, really moving through it. So that sense of being with is a big one as a core skill, that third one. So let's go ahead and look on here. So here are some of the mindfulness training techniques. There's a lot of techniques. There's a lot of different kinds of lineages, teachers. And when we talk about mindfulness, it's coming from the meditative traditions. So they are quite vast. So underneath that, I have their restrictive or open intention, and this means more or less, kind of depending on are you a beginner, or are you an intermediate practitioner? It's kind of, you can start restrictive and then move into more of open intention. So there you'll see the beginning practices often have this more of a restrictive focus. So meaning something like tracking the breath through meditation. So, maybe it is actually feeling the sensations of breath come through your nose. That would be a focus. And maybe another one, an option would be feeling the breath, kind of the rising and falling of your chest or your abdomen as you breathe. So this emphasizes that development of those core skills of concentration, the clarity and equanimity that we just spoke about. When you get to more intermediate advanced practices, then there becomes that open attention, open awareness option. So increasing amount of sensory experience, such as choiceless awareness. So more or less what that might look like is something, say you cultivate this concentrative practice where you're focusing on the breath, then you might expand into a practice where you're just sitting and you're becoming aware of body sensations, tracking moment by moment what arises in thought. So that is a little bit more of that open awareness kind of practice. That's also a technique to mindfulness training. And then again, formal and informal practices. Formal would be more of the kind of these breath work practices. Perhaps there's a certain lineage or tradition that teaches a certain way. There's also informal practices. Mindfulness can look like something like, for example, you're driving in your car, you're in your car, and you're just focusing on driving, and being as mindful, attentive, meaning that you are paying attention in the moment. You don't have the radio on, perhaps. You're kind of tracking and noticing, if you're having different thoughts. It can look a lot of different ways. It can be very informal as well. All right, so let's go ahead and go on here. I also want to say too that mindfulness and meditations in many of the world's traditions, beyond just Buddhist, a lot of times there's this notion it comes from Buddhism, but also I want to mention too, you find it in Christianity, Judaism, a lot of different world religions and spiritual traditions. You got a nice little visual there, mindful. So it kind of has the image of the person walking their dog, and they're thinking about all these different things. We have this the mind is literally full of thought and things, often going into the future in thought, maybe thinking about the past, but often not a lot of times in the present moment. We have that little image of the dog is kind of just looking at the trees and the sun and kind of being in the moment. All right, so where does it come from? We have here, so in the 19th century, mindfulness was used to translate the Pali word sati. So we do find, some of the lineages, certainly so, coming from Buddhism found in Southeast Asia. We have, here the primary practice of Theravada Buddhism, which is establishing mindfulness. So this is said to lead to insight into the true nature of self and reality. There's a sense of impermanence, the suffering of conditional existence, and non-self. So definitely becomes very expansive, and it kind of goes into more as you perhaps do practice mindfulness. It could perhaps lead into some more of these lineages or knowledge that did certainly come before it. So so how did it get to the West? Like, how did it get here? Why, what was that? So we have here 3 images of teachers from the West who, went to Southeast Asia in the 60s and 70s and brought back these practices and began to teach them within the framework of Buddhism. In the 80s and 90s, it was discovered that those practices could be extracted from Buddhism and the cultural matrix of Asia and used within a secular context. So we've got Jack Kornfield's written many books, Sharon Salzberg, and Joseph Goldstein. Joseph Goldstein's really been influential in the psychology field in particular, how he has integrated that into mental health. And so let's look at the secular mindfulness. So mindfulness awareness practices started to be used within a secular context to develop useful attentional skills. These practices became ever more prevalent in clinical settings for pain management, addiction recovery, stress reduction, and as an adjunct to psychotherapy. And really, one of the main reasons, mindfulness is entering the mainstream more and more is because of all the research coming out on the benefits. So, kind of going back to the Jon Kabat-Zinn at the very beginning, his definition of mindfulness, he's done a significant amount of empirical research that has been pointing to these actual benefits. So that's kind of where it becomes into the clinical settings now, within healthcare, like I mentioned, mental health, schools. So the research is really backing up this. So we've got that. So let's look at that. Mindfulness in healthcare. So I'll talk a little bit about that. So there's, again, that Jon Kabat-Zinn who I mentioned. So he created the mindfulness-based stress reduction at the University of Massachusetts Medical School to treat chronically ill patients. And subsequently, a number of other psychotherapeutic modalities centering around mindfulness were developed, which includes acceptance and commitment therapy. You'll often see that, within a lot of practitioners, a lot of clinicians, counselors, have been trained in ACT. So that's a very common one. We also see it in mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, the MBCT, and also dialectical behavioral therapy. So there's a big core component of mindfulness in DBT. So that's a lot of how it's been more widely spreading since then, since his studies in the clinical research realm. So I'd love to talk a little bit about the benefits here of mindfulness. So mindfulness, it truly changes the brain in positive ways. There is research to back this up that we are seeing more and more of. So we have a little image here of how it works, the science of meditation. So mindfulness involves 6 neurophysiological processes that lead to a person's meditative state of self-awareness. So we can kind of, go around maybe in a circular clockwise way. We have attention regulation. There it's kind of at the prefrontal cortex area, which I'll go into a little bit of the neuroscience, but it really, it works in, regulating attention, helping to be able to focus a little bit better. Pro-social behavior as well, cultivating a sense of empathy for others. We've got emotion regulation down there, extinction and reconsolidation. So it actually has been shown to change behaviors or attitudes. And then we've got up in the upper left corner, non-attachment and decentering. So this is the idea of letting go of the ego. And they're at the center of the brain, intention and motivation to achieve mindfulness. So there's all of these different things that have been researched that have proven some of these benefits. All right, actually, I'm going to kind of just go back for a minute because I do want to mention as well some research, specific research. So, for example, University of Wisconsin-Madison, there was a lab there that's shown that meditators are better able to monitor emotions and thoughts and let go of those that might cause distress. So that's kind of more or less of what I mentioned about the non-attachment and decentering idea. And there's another study at the University of North Carolina. Psychologists studying mindfulness found mindfulness-trained participants showed significant improvement in their critical cognitive skills and performed significantly higher in cognitive tests than a control group after only 4 days of training for only 20 minutes per day. So these are the kind of studies that are coming out on this. All right, let's look at overcoming fear and anger, the old brain versus the new brain. Neuroplasticity. This is really cutting edge research in neuroscience that is showing that we have the power to influence our brains. So when we think certain thoughts, it actually strengthens those neural circuits. So mental states become neural traits. So it's kind of the idea of use it or lose it. What you put your attention on, the energy grows in that direction. So we have a lot of power with this. So neuroplasticity here, so we got the self-directed neuroplasticity. So this equals nurture positive states of mind to strengthen and build those neural networks. So this is a practice. This is the emphasis that the brain is like a muscle that we can build through practicing skills. I mentioned before, again, in that diagram, one of the benefits, pro-social behavior, so leading to impulse regulation, emotional awareness, compassion and empathy, and also forgiveness. All right, let's look at this stress response image here. So we've got a little image of the brain, and you can see that in a stress response, the amygdala, which is in more or less kind of, like right here, I'll put my cursor, that we got the amygdala, that sends a signal off, and basically you'll see what happens is there's a loss of the prefrontal regulation. Prefrontal cortex in the brain, this is associated with higher level thinking. This is associated with thinking, speaking clearly, being able to think. So think of a stress response. It's oftentimes this part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, it goes offline. You're pretty much in overdrive with the amygdala. You have these emotional associations. You have the spinal cord creates emotional reflexes. So this kind of, draws a person into more of a fight or flight response, and it goes into emotional habits. So more or less, when you think about it, you lose that ability to, think clearly. So we have a little bit more of categorized demonstration of kind of what happens. So more or less, here are things that are common. You can probably feel into an experience that you can relate to in that way. Our perception is narrowed, memory goes coarse, imprecise, learning is blocked. There's often a defense conditioning that comes in, a tendency to regress or perseverate, a fight or flight tone. So this is all the autonomic nervous system, heart races, starts to race. We have sweaty palms, our blood pressure goes up. It's basically like all the blood in our body is rushing to our fingers, to our feet, to fight or flight, to fight or flee. The muscular system, we've got tension, jaws are clenching, ready for action. So we have that stress response that happens. Then we've got the relaxation response. So the prefrontal regulation during alert, non-stress conditions. So this is where you can see here the DMFC, reality testing, error monitoring. So we're kind of, questioning, was that, is this what's really happening? Do I really need to be afraid? A top-down guidance of attention and thought. So again, you'll be able to think and draw your attention clearly. An inhibition of inappropriate actions. So we have that emotion regulation. So where's that? That's in comparison to that stress response. So here we've got the relaxation response is a physical state of deep rest that changes the physical and emotional responses to stress, and the opposite of the fight or flight response. So here, we have all of the positive, benefits in that relaxation response. So really, I bring this up because the newest part of the brain evolutionary, that prefrontal cortex that I was mentioning, and specifically the anterior cingulate. This is responsible for higher thinking and processing faculties such as intuition, empathy, and social awareness. These all get strengthened through meditative practices. Okay, so the oldest part of the brain, which I had just showed you in that stress response. So the hindbrain back here, this is more of the primitive survival brain. So this governs instinctual behavioral reflexes driven by fear and anger. So this gets suppressed and controlled through meditative practices. So basically, meditative practices strengthen higher functioning parts of the brain, which I showed right here, that are associated to the relaxation response. All right, so mindfulness improves self-regulation. So self-regulation being um, emotions, thoughts, actions, increases that level of awareness. We have here a little image, mindfulness, the resilient zone. So in our resilient zone, we have the best capacity for flexibility and adaptability in mind, body, and spirit. So basically, more or less, that means that there's a charge, maybe a stressful situation. There builds up into a release and goes back down. So it's more or less, it's regulated. Seeing here. There we go. This is in comparison to being stuck on hyperarousal. I'm going to give it a minute here. It looks like it's still loading the slide. So this would be in comparison from the previous slide where you saw that nice, up, it's kind of in that resilient zone. This is outside of the resilient zone where, we have a stressful traumatic event or stressful traumatic triggers happen. And more or less, it kind of goes up and down. And then a lot of times getting stuck on that high hyperarousal, hyperactivity, hypervigilance, mania, anxiety and panic, rage, pain. And also the opposite of coming down into depression, disconnection, exhaustion, fatigue, numbness. So a lot of times, you could be, either kind of stuck on high hyperarousal or on the low, the hypoarousal states. All right. So I'd love to do a little bit of a practice here. So as we kind of come to the end, so basically this is going to be a breath focused meditation, really kind of training the mind to settle, letting go of mental clutter and focusing on the present moment. So I'm going to invite you to just kind of find a comfortable position. So you might, shift a little bit and in your seat. And so you want to be, you want your spine to be erect, so upright but not rigid. So you find that nice balance of comfortability with uprightness in your spine. And I want to invite you, if it feels safe for where you're at, you can close your eyes. A lot of times when you close your eyes, it can really help you to draw your senses within. And as you settle in and you close your eyes and you find your upright spine, I'm going to invite you to take 2 slow, soft, steady breaths in and out of the nose. And if you need to breathe through your mouth, that's okay, but see if you can breathe through your nose. So on an inhale, feel the breath enter into your lungs. And getting all the way up to the top, slow, soft, steady exhale, release the breath. And again, let's do 2 more like that. So slow, soft, steady breath. Inhale. Slow, soft, steady breath. Exhale. And once more. Slow, soft, steady inhale. Slow, soft, steady exhale. I'm going to invite you as you release that breath to just come back to your natural breath. Take a moment, and I'm going to invite you to scan the body. So, meaning you can start at your feet. So, moving your awareness from your feet, just kind of feeling the sensations in your feet, up into your ankles, your calves, up into your knees, and drawing your awareness. So, just see if you can keep your attention focused on both legs at one time. So, up your thighs, tops of the thighs, the bottom sides of the thighs, into your pelvis, feeling the sensations of making contact with where you're seated. So, noticing sensations as you sit, making contact maybe with the chair underneath you, feeling the chair behind you, into your back, and feeling all the way up your spine. But anytime the mind is wandering into thought, just bring it back to the sensation and into your midsection. So, feeling your stomach up into your heart and up into your shoulders and down your arms, feeling the upper arms to your elbows, forearms, into your wrists and hands, feeling your fingers, just noticing the sensation of where your hands may rest in your lap or on your chair or your desk. And then scanning, just noticing the sensations in your head, noticing any places of tension. Just bringing your attention to those places. Seeing if you can perhaps soften as you bring your attention to places of tension around your eyes and your mouth, backside of your neck. And as you kind of scan the body a bit from toe to head, we're going to this last part of our mindfulness meditation practice, I'm going to guide you back to that breath again. So, tuning back to noticing your breath as you naturally breathe, and just focus your attention on the feeling of the breath coming in and going out. So, when your mind may start to wander, you can simply notice it. And see if you can bring that sense of non judgmental awareness. Just notice it and gently guide your attention back to the breath. So this may be over and over again, especially if you're new to it. It might be this concept of I'm not doing this right, or it's really hard to focus on the breath. That's very, very normal. So the practice is in of itself to notice when your attention goes somewhere other than the breath. So we'll stay here for a few more minutes. Again, focusing on the feel of the breath. Just very gently, kindly bringing your attention back if the mind starts to go. We're going to do a little bit of transition as we kind of come to the end of the practice today. So I would invite you to again take 2 conscious, slow, soft inhale and exhale breaths here at the end. So deep breath, feeling the lungs, feeling the chest. And then slow, soft, steady exhale, release the breath. One more time, slow, soft inhale breath all the way up to the top. Exhale, release the breath. And as you're ready, you can open your eyes. And I'll come back here together. So you can kind of see the framework that I led us through here, this breath focused meditation. Um, and certainly, again, that emphasis around practice. So as little as 5 minutes, 5 minutes, I think that was more or less a little over 5 minutes that we practice here. This is really about the emphasis of building that muscle. So same way as if you were to go to a gym and start lifting weights or doing some cardio, our muscles are going to grow as our attention is placed upon that cultivation. So same thing with our mind. So it's really emphasis, even 5 minutes, it makes a difference. So there again, so you can create a mindful pauses throughout your day, even 1 minute, to practice slowing down, feeling the body, breathing more fully, letting go of thoughts, and just coming back to the present moment with gratitude and acceptance. And it expands beyond just this kind of formal meditation, breath work practice, into yoga, art, or another mindful activity, even walking, things like that. There's tons of phone apps there. You can find a lot of great resources if you have a smartphone, or even do a little Google search. There's just so many programs, especially now during COVID. You often find a lot of online offerings and meditation, mindfulness classes online. All right. So there's my contact info. Again, my name is Jovahna Pena, and I'm a wellness clinician and somatic psychotherapist here at Jefferson Center through the wellness department. Through wellness, we offer a lot of wellness classes. And now that we are all virtual, we're doing everything on Zoom. So we're offering a variety of wellness classes. If you're interested, certainly feel free to reach out to me, email me. We are going to be teaching an 8-week mindfulness and yoga for depression and anxiety class that starts at the end of this month. So if you want to join in on that, I would love to have you. Please feel free to reach out to me. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. We have had a couple questions come in. So you've kind of addressed this, but the first one is, how long do I need to practice mindfulness for it to work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would kind of go back to some of those, the research that's come out, specifically the one that I mentioned about the one at the University of North Carolina, when psychologists were studying, and they showed that, participants showed an improvement in cognitive skills, performed higher in cognitive tests only after 4 days of training for only 20 minutes per day. So there's definitely, I think you could do a little bit more, Google research, but it's showing that, it can happen, quite rapidly, actually, through some focused attention. And I would also recommend, if you want some more further information, doing some research on neuroplasticity. You can do a little Google research that's coming out with how the brain is actually being able to make these physical changes.
Awesome. The next one we have is, do you have any tips for how I can practice mindfulness and meditation with my kids?
Yeah, there's actually, I don't have it off the top of my head, but I have been referred to some specific, especially during COVID times, that there are some parent tested, approved mindfulness classes, yoga classes that they love, kids love. So I'm happy. Feel free to reach out, like send me an email. I have those resources. But there are more and more that are coming out specifically guided, for kids that are fun. So that make it, on a kid level, accessible, parent-child related. So I'm certainly, very happy to kind of guide you more towards those specific ones.
Awesome. That's so awesome. They're making specific ones for kids.
Yeah, definitely.
The last question we have is, do you have any recommendations for apps I can use to practice meditation regularly?
Yeah, there are. Let's see here. If you have the app, um, I'm going to pull it up so I can give you, because some of them you'll see if you go to the app store, if you have a smartphone, you can, a lot of times they'll have, if you kind of look for different ones, they'll have, either they'll be free or they'll have introductory, you can try it out and see it. Some of the most common ones are Headspace. That's a big one. I know during COVID, they were offering some, discounted things for Headspace. There's also one called Calm. Insight Timer is another wonderful one. Those are kind of like the top ones that are out there. And yeah, so I would kind of just browse, see what's available. A lot of times I find ones that are free that are just as good as the paid ones. And really kind of, you can get so specific these days that you can even do mindfulness apps for focusing, mindfulness apps for, children, mindfulness apps for students. So you can get quite specific. So I really recommend go to the app store on your smartphone and take a look at what's out there, because there's so many right now.
Great. Yeah, there are a lot of awesome resources. Well, that is all the questions we have today. So just to wrap things up, no matter what you're facing in life, like if you're feeling overwhelmed, worried, or stressed, Jefferson Center is here for you. We're open and accepting new clients, and accessing care is easier than ever with our virtual appointments. You can visit our website at jcmh.org or follow us on Facebook for more resources and information. You can also reach us by calling 303-425-0300. Thanks so much and have a great day, everyone.